Before we get into Q&A, I want to give him a water break. I'd like to introduce Thelma Estrada.
Good evening. It should be no surprise to you because you got the email. So we're asking people to dig and to give. I think the forms are being passed around. If you're a Filipino citizen, it should be no problem because your donation will go straight to the campaign. If you're a U.S. citizen, we're going to try to segregate that money and use it for voter education. This is just so there's no legal question. So Walden was saying they've fielded Risa Ontiveros for the Senate. So she has a fighting chance. So if you the forms are being passed around, if you write your name and then check whether you are a Filipino citizen or a U.S. citizen, then we can.
How about a dual?
Yeah, dual means that it's okay. That your money can go straight.
Kano at Pinoy.
This is a donation to Risa's campaign?
Yes, to Akbayan and specifically, to help Risa.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start the question and answer portion. Please keep your question short, like 30 seconds, and to the point. And we're going to try to get these answered as many as possible. Okay?
Well, brother, I want to ask a question, but he's talking. Yeah. Okay. You're right. So, can I ask a question first? Okay, I have the privilege to ask a question first. Thank you. We went to the Philippines, Walden, and we are very troubled. This group of Halia, which is part of Akbayan apparently, and they are still picketing at the Terminal 2 because they have been displaced or locked out by the Philippine Airlines. I want you to speak something about their plight because we are international trade unions and we want our brothers and sisters to be given justice. So I want you, being a congressperson, to say something about the conditions and where is the future of our brothers and sisters who are still out there for the last 3 or 5 years picketing because they've been locked out by the Philippine Airlines, which is, I believe, is a quasi-Philippine government relationship with investors. So, can you say something about it? Thank you.
Yes, Palaya is the Philippine Airlines union of the ground employees. What happened was that there has been a restructuring of Palaya that is similar to what's been happening elsewhere, which is really a bad sort of thing, which is contractualization. So that regular employees, the union, they basically been deregularized, and what is now happening is that many of the functions that were performed by the ground employees and the union have been taken over by private corporations that are really tied in to the Lusyutan, who is the continues to be one of the key owners of the Philippine Airlines. Akbayan has supported Palaya, although Palaya is not part of Akbayan. We've been supporting it and trying to provide whatever mechanisms of support, especially in terms of pressuring the Aquino administration to really intervene and to freeze this contractualization process. We haven't been successful so far. What we have is one of our priority bills is the anti-contractualization bill, which is also known as the security of tenure bill. And among the provisions of this bill will be to limit contractual positions to only 20% of the jobs within an enterprise. Okay, so 80% should remain regular jobs, and 20% is the upper limit for contractual jobs. We were able to win in committee, in the Committee on Labor. We were able to get this passed in committee, but we were not able to get this to a discussion on second reading in the House because I think once management realized that it had gotten out of committee, and I think it exerted all sorts of pressures on the House leadership not to take it up or bring it to plenary right away. And that's my sense about what happened here. So I guess in the 16th Congress, the anti-contractualization bill or security of tenure bill is one of the ones that we will really push. We really need to get it onto discussion pretty fast, okay, in plenary so that it can be approved as law fairly quickly. What's going for us is, I think, a realization throughout Asia right now that contractualization has really created much more problems for national development than positive. Having been positive for national development. People are looking at Indonesia. What we've seen in Indonesia recently has been wages have been raised by the government to fairly strongly high levels, and the idea is to begin to make labor or to make a well-paid labor force an asset for development rather than something that you try to destroy, because that's really not the way to go. So it's not just a question of labor rights at this point, it's a question of national development that we do away with contractualization.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next question.
We had a speaker not long ago from the Philippines to talk about the labor movement in the Philippines. And what I learned from that was that there was a lot of corruption in the labor movement over there also. I would like to see some kind of legislation that would address that and improve the working conditions of the people and also create jobs.
Yeah, the one positive development there is you now have a formation called Nagkaisa, or we've come together, which includes labor unions from different parts of the spectrum, from the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines to the Alliance for Progressive Labor, to form what is now the biggest labor federation. It's about a year old. And what's interesting about this is that they're not only fighting for labor rights, they're not only fighting against contractualization, they're also taking up consumer rights, and especially around the high cost of electricity and the high cost of energy. So what's interesting is that labor is moving beyond just labor-specific issues to take on the concerns of other sectors like consumers. And that seems to be a very positive development. And certainly, I think that this question of how do you root out corruption from the labor movement is something that they will have to really confront too. But having said that, I think that there are reform unions in the Philippines. There are clean unions in the Philippines, and I think one of the things that we in Akbayan are trying to do is to support these unions, and we're in fact working with the Kaisa around this, around a whole set of labor issues. So yes, definitely.
That's an issue I would be very interested in following.
Yes, so let's touch on that.
If I had known you were going to be this bigger political figure, I would have sat next to you in class more times. My question is, Aquino's about to be termed out, and I don't know about the term limits in Congress. What do you have set in motion that can make for the continuation of this very optimistic trend in the country in governance.
Yes. Well, yes, I think the president now has 3 years to consolidate the reforms, and in terms of term limits in Congress, well, for the party list system, this is my last term, going to 2010. That assumes that we'll win several seats, right? But I'm the first nominee, so we're expecting to gain around 3 seats this time. But the hope then is that we will be able to continue a reform coalition in the next Congress, and that sort of is going to be a major challenge to be able to create that, maintain that coalition, we, of course, some of the candidates that are running for 2016, because the presidency, let's face it, the presidency is a very powerful institution. Okay, Aquino has shown how it can be a very powerful institution for the good. Okay, and what we need is somebody who can take over, who will be able to pursue the reform agenda.
Is there somebody?
Well, some people are saying that it's Mar Rojas, who is now the head of the Department of Transportation. He's clean, okay, but the problem is that he does not have the sort of a common touch. But you need somebody who is comfortable with people to be able to win votes. He ran as vice president last time. He lost to Giorgio Binay. Now, Binay does not have a good record in terms of integrity, right? Now, this is what is around. But he has a very strong common touch, okay? And he knows how to build alliances. So it's going to be very interesting what happens in terms of who becomes the next president. But certainly, those in the reform coalition at this point realize they have to be very serious that there is somebody that runs for president that will in fact continue the reform agenda. So this is, I'm glad you brought it out, because I think we all have an interest in making sure that that such a person does get elected.
Bro in the back standing.
Good evening, Congressman. My name is Gus Mercado. I'm from Dallas, Texas. And my wife Ethel here is the state president of the Philippine-American Chamber of Commerce, which is now the biggest film chamber in the United States. We came here just to meet you and to ask a very important question about our voting rights. For your information, Mr. Congressman, according to the records, the Philippine consulates, our group in Texas, and Rodel knows this, we registered the largest number of absentee voters out of 45 states that do not have consulates. Texas, for the last 3 years, has been #1. But we have a serious concern right now, and I hope you can address it. We just learned about the recent decision of the COMELEC to disenfranchise 250,000 voters overseas who were unable to vote in the last national elections. But we talked to many of them, and it wasn't their fault. Many of them didn't even get their ballots. They were returned to the consulate. And although in the registration they included their telephone numbers and email addresses, they never got any communication from the consulate that they didn't get the ballots. All right? So our position is, and we are fighting this through our national federations, NAPA and U.S. Pinoy. Some of you are members of that. U.S. Pinoy for Good Governance. We are appealing, and we are meeting face-to-face with COMELEC and with the help of some senators to fight this injustice, because, my God, we worked so hard. We twisted thousands of arms of our kababayans to to plead with them to register and vote. So just to disenfranchise, just disenfranchise 250,000 voters is a step in the wrong direction. What is your organization and your party and you yourself are doing to help us fight this? Thank you.
Well, we certainly agree that this is a step in the wrong direction. And we raised this and complained to COMELEC. And in fact, as soon as we got the note from Rodel about this, we went to see COMELEC that they have to reverse this decision. And they said that they would, they said that they would study our, our position on this and your position on it, and that they would come out with, position paper on it, and hopefully that position will be a reversal of this process. So yes, because we told them that disenfranchising 250,000 Filipinos at the same time that we now have a bill that eliminates the return requirement are quite contradictory. So we saw Commissioner Tagle during the bicameral session on the bill, and we did express our very strong concern and opposition to what they have done on this. So we're following up on it, and we will be communicating with you on whether or not there's a very good possibility that we can in fact reverse this process.
Thank you. Intervention. If you park in the garage, you're supposed to take your car out at 7 o'clock, or you're gonna tow it away, or you're gonna pay $50. So if you park in the garage right now, you go to the security guard because one of the officers is trying to help you get out in this garage. They close at 7 o'clock. Sorry, we forgot to announce that earlier.
It's fascinating.
Gentleman in the front with beer.
Yes. Does Akbayan have an alternative a broader development, economic development program? For example, MST in Brazil is very critical of Lula's emphasis on export, monocrop agriculture and so on. They have a diverse agriculture, local markets, cooperative. Do you have an overall view of how that ought to take place in the Philippines, and how do you, if you do, how do you fight for it, and if you don't, why?
Well, we have a program. It's well articulated. One of the centerpieces is land reform, and that's why we had the Akbayan sponsored the Agrarian Reform with Extension Act to complete the land redistribution program. Without land reform, you're not going to have development. That's why it's so central that we've been fighting for it within the administration. The other element here is also that we need to have a strategy of development that's focused on revitalizing agriculture as our leading sector, because that's where most of the Filipinos are. And revitalization of agriculture means, among other things, not only agrarian reform, but we need to protect our agriculture from the entry of subsidized agricultural commodities from the United States, which has been, really destroying us. And we also need tremendous support services for our farmers, and also moving towards more organic forms of farming rather than the traditional chemical-intensive kind of farming. And so we have an agricultural minister that's very sympathetic to this program at this point. But as I said earlier, we really need also to revitalize our manufacturing and our industry, because this has been devastated by neoliberalism. So what we need is industrial policy that will identify what are the key sectors of manufacturing initially that we need to save, and then what we need to develop. And for that, you'll need a lot of investments. And one of the things we're proposing is, and we have been constantly advocating, is to renegotiate the foreign debt, if not to make a step just like Kirchner did in Argentina, which was basically to radically unilaterally reduce the debt. Because right now, 20% of our government budget, or 25% some years, goes to just servicing the old debt. Now, if 20 to 25% of your budget is going to servicing debt, that's so much money that's not going to infrastructure. That's so much money that's not going to development. So if we can plug that hole, just like Kirchner did in Argentina, then and rechannel that money to domestic investment, then that is a major step forward. Argentina was, until Kirchner did that, Argentina was in the pits. But ever since he downgraded the debt by 80% or 70% and paid only 30% to every dollar unilaterally, they screamed. But he said, if you don't want to pay this, in 2 weeks' time, it's just going to be 10 cents for every dollar. Okay, so what happened is that Argentina grew by around 10% a year between 2003 and 2008. So that's the kind of bold politics that we need. So these are some of the elements of the proposed program that we're putting forward, you know, in terms of plus also the fact that labor and high wages has to be seen as an asset, because the problem with the domestic market is that if you have people in the domestic market that are not part of the market because they have low purchasing power, then the tendency will be for export-led growth. So what you need is, by opposing contractualization and really raising wages, then you create a viable domestic market that can be the engine of growth. So, and finally, I think we have to have sustainable technologies of development at this point in time, especially in this period of climate change. So you have, these are the elements of our Akbayan program. Some of them are now being implemented. Some we still have to push the government to take up. But unless we have this structural kind of program in place, the gains around development, like the anti-poverty program, will be evanescent. So that's why we are pushing very hard that these reforms be enacted, because otherwise we'll end this next 3 years and we're not going to have a solid sort of development policy in place.
Man in blue hat.
Yes, I wanted to, you had some rather descriptive language, Congressman, about the former president, and I just wondered if you had any descriptive language about Senator Trillanes. Is that the way you say it, Rodell? T-R-I-L-L-A-N-S. Do you have any descriptive language about him and his Chinese activities, since you have some concerns about the Chinese taking over? And also something about the peace agreement, too, on the end.
Yeah, well, you know, this was a big fight between Enrile, the Senate President, and Mr. Trillanes. I don't want to go into descriptive language, but I can say that I was disturbed by the negotiations that was being carried out by Senator Trillanes. He said that he was doing it on behalf of the president as a sort of a back channel, and there's a lot of controversy about that. Which, well, the thing is that, you know, it's sort of difficult for me to judge whether in fact he was doing it at the behest of the president as a back channel operation. But Malacanang did say, the presidential palace did say, that he was being used as a back channel now. Now, whether he stepped beyond his what he was delegated to do, is the source of controversy.
Well, I know he's number 12 right now, and your candidate's number 18, so I would encourage everybody to vote for your candidate.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
The gentleman with the hat.
My name is Jerry Sokol, and I'm concerned about the human rights reparation bill or act that's about to be signed. You mentioned that there are 12,000 possible claimants. There were 10,000 in the class action suit, so that means there's only 2,000 that's going to be getting the reparation. Are you limiting it to 12,000?
No.
And who is a possible Akbayan leader that might be appointed to the commission head?
Well, on the last question, no, we don't want anybody there from Akbayan. I think we really need people there from civil society, so that would be good to have civil society people. The 12,000 is the estimate of the Committee on Human Rights, Eta Rosales. The thing is this, that there are about 9,000 victims that were part of the class action suit in Hawaii. This was the class action suit that a Hawaii court judge, that these were legitimate human rights victims. Now, this was a U.S. court judging this. So, what the law says is that those 9,000 are that were part of the Hawaii class action suit that proved themselves to be human rights victims will now will be automatically compensated. Okay, but not everybody who was a human rights victim participated in the Hawaii class action suit. Okay, there are many who basically said, "Oh, it's a U.S. court. Why should we do that? Why should we participate in it?" And others just did not take the time to register themselves for this process. So, the estimate of the Committee on Human Rights is that there are many more, possibly 3,000 or more, who will be claimants in this process. So, the important thing is that all possible human rights victims and their families will be open to making claims, okay? And there will be a claimants board, claims board, that will in fact decide on their on whether the claims that they're making is truthful or not. But it could be beyond 12,000. Okay, we'll see what happens, because once the law gets into effect, people will be urged to register their what happened to them. And there's several categories. There's death and disappearance. There's torture and sexual assault. There's economic dispossession and economic destruction of properties. So according to what happened to you, you would get a number of different points there. Okay. So this is, it's a very open process, and the claims board will have to finish its task within 2 years' time, because people, many people have been waiting for a long time. Okay, so it has to be finished within 2 years' time. That's the mandate that's given by the law to the claims board. Now, having said that, I think it's I think this is the only government in the world that in fact is making reparations for human rights victims under a dictatorship. No, I mean, I was trying to research which other government has really done this. So I think that's an item that we can really be proud of. Despite the fact that we have an administration that was not part of that process, nevertheless, being government, and having historical continuity to the Marcos regime, the government recognizes its obligations to its citizens. So,
question?
Well, I'm Rad Aballantos of the U.S. Pinoys for Good Governance. Also, I'm the Vice President of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce of San Mateo County. Before anything else, Congressman Bello, I would like to acknowledge and applaud and congratulate you for supporting us in our Overseas Voting Act, which of course you really supported, and you remember that we were there during the congressional hearing last time, last year. So we would like to thank you, and I would like to ask every Filipino Americans here to actually applaud on that one and congratulate you.
That would not have been possible without the pressure that came from here. The U.S. Filipinos for Good Governance and others, Pinoys for Good Governance, really lobbied very hard to support this measure. In fact, we had a congressional hearing where a number of you were there because you know, I think what happened is, you know, how powerful chairs are, right? So I think the presence of people from the U.S. coming into that congressional hearing got the chair of the committee really appreciate the fact that, oh my God, this is a political force. No? So when it came to pushing the bill through, he became very, very supportive of the bill. So this was a decisive act that the U.S.-based Filipinos were able to do. And so congratulate yourselves too.
First and foremost, very important for us overseas Filipinos. So, and follow-up questions with because you made mention about the Scarborough shows and the Spratlys, you know. It was my feeling that our diplomatic corps is kind of slow in regards to submitting a petition or probably making a call about our disagreement in regards to China's position of the West Philippine Sea. And as you know, we just submitted that in the United Nations or the International Court just recently last month. So do you feel that that was slow and kind of late?
Well, I think they were. If you ask me, I think the DFA has been proceeding with a certain amount of caution rather than delay. I think they were trying to feel out, you know, how China would be reacting to different kinds of measures, because they have the law there. They, you know, the DFA people who specialize in international maritime law are among the best in the world, right? So this was more like, when do you, in fact, push it? You know, when do you make it? When do you submit it to the appropriate global courts? You know, and I think my sense is that they were first trying different channels, like ASEAN, for instance, to get the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to have a supportive role for the Philippines. But unfortunately, that did not pan out because Cambodia was being the country that was following China's agenda in ASEAN, and this is a major problem when you know, the Cambodian government has essentially been bought by Chinese money, so that we could not even get a joint declaration, which happens after every ASEAN meeting, you know, about the achievements of a summit, because the Cambodian government blocked this, and it's the chair. It has been the chair of ASEAN. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that they were trying to, I think they were trying to explore different alternatives, and then they finally thought that at this point, if those are not moving, then let's try this. Let's move on the international court situation. So that's my interpretation.
And we're coming up to 8 o'clock, and so gentlemen, you have the last question.
Yes, where do you see the Philippines 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
Well, you know, well, I think if we can, this is a highly contingent thing. If we can keep up the process of reform, deepen it, then I think that, you know, we could have a momentum that could really make a very big change on where the country is headed. The good thing is that you have a national mood right now that is upbeat because of the initiatives of the government. And I think the passage of the reproductive health bill has affected things in so many different ways. You know, like, yes, it's possible. You know, because it's whether we like it or not, the population issue has been so central in terms of our development. You know? So I think that the good governance, the reproductive health bill, the anti-poverty program, and then if that can be supported by a viable macroeconomic development strategy, then we'll have the basis for a sustained and sustainable growth path. So it's, as I said, it's very important that beyond 2016, we really need a reform coalition that moves forward rather than goes back to the transactional politics of the past. And that's the real danger if you have a candidate that belongs to the transactional methodology win in 2016, then it will be, you know, a lot of the reforms we've done in the last few years will be in danger. So I can't predict, but I'm confident that the reform momentum will be sustained.
Because we believe in accountability and clearness and transparency, Edwin, can you report on what happened tonight?
We were counting how much money we collected tonight, and I wanted to announce this as a way for us to celebrate the collective support we generated today for high leverage change in the Philippines. I think our dollars are precious, and it's important when we contribute that we're contributing towards a high leverage group. And I think Congressman Walden Bello is high leverage, as well as Risa Hontiveros, who's the senatorial candidate of Akbayan. But in this room tonight, between checks and cash and pledges, we collected $5,873. We're also expecting money through the mail because we made phone calls before this meeting and some people are sending in money. So hopefully next year we will have a visit again from Congressman Bello, but then maybe we might also get a visit from a Senator Risa Hontiveros.
I would ask you, can you, let's see, what's that in pesos?
Multiply it by 40.
And while he's calculating that, I'd like to acknowledge the Apollo officers that are in the room today. You've already met Doslin Paras, he's the president. Elizabeth Aldeon, she's the treasurer. Sherelle Dudley, she's the retiree chair. We also have Masoda Ocampo, she's also one of the vice presidents.
There are members around.
And there's also members of Apollo throughout the room, so please stand up if you are a member.